for a couple of minutes, I think we'll go over a punch, a properly executed punch, an Isshinryu. Now, as I said before, the Isshinryu punch is a bit different than other styles. We do a vertical punch. We come from chamber. Now, things you want to think about are, number one, because the punch in Isshinryu is so powerful, the dynamics are so strenuous, you have to make sure that your joints are protected. So we do that by making sure we have proper body dynamics. Number one, of course, we start to make sure our fist is tight. We want a fist of steel, not a marshmallow fist. What that means is you want to have your fist so tight that if you hit something hard, it won't crack or break your fingers. You must compress it. And you do that by practicing, and you can actually test it this way. So number one, make sure your fist is tight and strong. Next, you want to make sure your wrist is flat. That's so when you strike the object, you don't flip it back and actually end up hurting your wrist. So make sure that your wrist is actually flat. We don't want to come out straight out this way. We want to actually come into the middle for our strike, aiming for the sternum. But of course, this works well going for the face, sternum, almost anywhere. But we're going to practice to the middle area as target practice. The next thing you want to do is make sure your shoulders are pulled down to protect the shoulder joint. You don't want them up this way, you want to pull them down so the joint, which is a ball and socket joint, is protected by holding it in with the muscle. So when you're doing your punch, make sure your shoulders are pulled down, and that way, with the shock of the actual strike, the shoulder is protected. Next, you want to make sure you don't hyperextend the elbow. A lot of people do that hyperextension. You don't feel it at the beginning, but sooner or later you may get what's called tennis elbow. So you want to make sure you're coming in and stopping, I say like 98%. And that way your elbow is protected. So really keep an eye on that. It's important to protect your elbow or all joints, because a joint injury is pretty much a permanent injury. So you want to make sure that that's protected. So make sure you're, as I said, you want to make sure you're rotating the hips, as I said, coming in. What I do to make sure the punch is actually very linear, very straight, is I slide my arm along the side of my body and I'm coming out. And the last part of the dynamic of the actual arm itself is a snap at the end, like a bullet. The snap gives a lot of extra power. So you're getting power from the hips, you're getting power from the repetition, the strength of your muscle. But you also want the snap from the snap of the punch. It looks like this. That snap gives a lot more power to the punch and also sets up reverberation through the target, and it makes it easier to shatter parts of the body. So you're here, you want to rotate in, and once again keep the shoulders down, rotate the hips. By the way, when I rotate the hips, I like to have my hand in chamber, but sometimes I will slide my hand up even a little bit further, back further, so I have more distance, because we have very short distance to travel to generate as much power, as much speed as possible. So the more distance I have, the more energy will be transferred from my fist to the target. So once again, we're here like this, rotate in and snap it. Hey! Hey, good. Okay, you hear me do a ki. So we don't do ki all the time, but I'll explain the ki relative to the actual punch. Ki is called a spirit yell. I've used the ki, my ki, a few times, actually, to make it so I don't have to actually fight somebody, because the ki can be scary for somebody who's trying to bother you or hurt you. Ki can actually be kind of like a very fierce yell. It's called a spirit yell. And the ki actually comes from here. A lot of people do it up here, but you want to get the power from the lower abs. So it's like this. And the ki, of course, will give you more power, just like when somebody pushes something heavy, you know, they go, "Argh!" Ki does the same thing, actually adds to the power of your technique. And the ki will startle the attacker, so they'll probably blink, tighten up, and once they loosen up, that's about the time when your technique will penetrate them. So the ki is important to perfect. Once again, make sure it's from the lower abs. Okay, so that really settles most of the punching. The basic things I want you to take from this is make sure the power comes from the hips. Don't forget to rotate the hips. Make sure your shoulders are held down. Make sure you don't lock the elbow. Don't forget we're doing a vertical fist. We're not rotating as you see on TV or in the movies. And we're actually striking with these knuckles here. And you want to snap. You want to practice this as much as you can. I do as many punches as I can during the day to warm up. You can sometimes do 100 punches. Start off slowly, build up speed, and then you have what's called a perfect punch.